This is unacceptable!
Breathe, Mariana. Just focus on me.
Everything is gonna be all right, dear.
I was 8 months pregnant, digging through a restaurant's trash bin when a hand grabbed my wrist. My heart stopped. I looked up into the eyes of the city's most powerful billionaire, and he whispered something that made my blood run cold. "These aren't Beggar's hands." He was staring at my wedding ring, the one thing I couldn't bring myself to sell. I tried to run, but he'd already seen the truth. My secret, the one that could get us both killed, was about to explode into the open. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my life, my past, and the family I'd been searching for my entire existence. Before we dive into this incredible story, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. What you're about to hear involves family secrets, forbidden feelings, and a twist so shocking it'll leave you speechless. Don't skip even 1 second. I promise every moment counts. My name is Mariana, and 4 months ago, I was standing outside the Silver Heights restaurant in the wealthiest district of the city, wearing a dirty brown coat that was 2 sizes too big, trying to look invisible. The cold November wind cut through my thin clothing, and I wrapped my arms around my swollen belly, trying to keep my baby warm. This had become my routine, waiting until the kitchen staff threw out the leftover food from the evening service, then quietly asking if I could take some home. I know what you're thinking. A pregnant woman? Begging for scraps? How did I end up here? Well, that's exactly what everyone wondered when they saw me, because the truth was, I didn't fit the picture of what people expected a beggar to look like. Rosa, the kitchen manager, was the first person who noticed something was off about me. She'd seen me 3 times a week for months, and one evening she said to her co-worker, loud enough for me to hear, "That woman speaks like she went to university. Did you hear her say thank you in perfect English? And look at her hands. Those aren't the hands of someone who's lived on the streets." But Rosa was kind. She never questioned me directly, just quietly gave me the food and told me to stay safe. That particular night, I was more nervous than usual. A black Mercedes had been circling the block for the past 20 minutes, and every time it passed, I ducked behind the dumpster. My hands were shaking as I accepted the containers of food from Rosa. She noticed. "Honey, are you in some kind of trouble?" she asked softly. I just shook my head and forced a smile. "I'm fine. Thank you for this. God bless you." But I wasn't fine. I hadn't been fine since the night 10 months ago, when everything fell apart. Inside the restaurant, a man I'd never met was watching me through the window. His name was Christopher Hawthorne, though everyone called him Chris. He was 43 years old, owned a chain of luxury restaurants across the country, and had more money than most people could imagine, but money hadn't bought him happiness. 3 years ago, he'd lost his wife Catherine during childbirth. The baby died too. Since then, Chris had been emotionally dead inside, just going through the motions of living, working constantly to avoid feeling anything at all. His business partner was trying to talk to him about some expansion deal, but Chris wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on me, the pregnant woman outside, hunched over and terrified. Something about me reminded him of Catherine, though he couldn't figure out what. Maybe it was just the pregnancy. Maybe it was the vulnerability. Whatever it was, he couldn't look away. That's when I collapsed. The exhaustion, the hunger, the fear, it all hit me at once. My knees buckled and I felt myself falling. I remember thinking, this is it. I'm going to lose this baby too. But then, strong arms caught me before I hit the ground. I opened my eyes and found myself staring into the face of the most handsome man I'd ever seen. His brown eyes were filled with concern, and he was holding me like I weighed nothing at all. "I've got you," he said softly. "You're safe." Chris had run outside the moment he saw me falling. Now, holding this mysterious pregnant woman in his arms, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. The desire to protect someone, to care about whether someone lived or died. He helped me sit down on a bench, and that's when my coat fell open slightly. Chris saw it immediately, the gold wedding ring on my finger. It was an expensive ring with intricate engravings. His eyes narrowed. "Beggars don't wear wedding rings like that," he said, not unkindly. "Who are you really? And who are you running from?" I panicked. I tried to pull my hand away, tried to stand up and run, but I was too weak. And honestly, I was so tired of running, so tired of being alone, so tired of being terrified every second of every day. I started crying. Not gentle tears, but the kind of sobbing that comes from months of holding everything inside. Chris didn't say anything. He just sat down next to me and waited until I could breathe again. "Come inside," he finally said. "Let me get you some real food, hot food. And then, if you want to tell me what's really going on, I'll listen. No judgment. I promise." I don't know why I trusted him. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes. Maybe it was because I was so desperate for help that I would have trusted anyone. Or maybe deep down, some part of me recognized that this man was connected to my story in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Chris took me to a private room in the restaurant, away from all the other diners. He ordered soup, bread, roasted chicken, vegetables, more food than I'd seen in months. As the plates arrived, I tried to maintain some dignity, tried to eat slowly like a proper lady, but I was starving. Chris noticed my refined table manners, the way I knew which fork to use, the way I dabbed my mouth with the napkin. "You're not a beggar," he said quietly. "You're educated. You come from a good family. So what happened? Please, talk to me." I looked into his eyes and saw genuine concern, not pity, concern. There's a difference. "My name is Mariana," I said slowly, my voice shaking. "And you're right, I'm not a real beggar. I'm hiding from a very dangerous man." Chris leaned forward, his full attention on me. "Tell me everything?" So I did. At least I told him part of the truth. "I was a doctor," I began. "I worked at City General Hospital in the emergency department. 2 years ago I met a man named Antonio Martinez. He was an investigative journalist, brilliant and passionate about exposing corruption. We fell in love, got married, everything was perfect." Chris listened without interrupting. 10 months ago, Antonio was working on a big story about corporate corruption, embezzlement, connections to organized crime. He wouldn't tell me all the details because he wanted to protect me, but he was excited. He said once this story broke, it would change everything. My voice cracked. 3 days before he planned to publish it, someone shot him right outside our house. I watched him die in my arms. Chris's face went pale. "My God, I'm so sorry." "I was 8 weeks pregnant," I continued. "The police investigated, but they never found the killer. They said it was probably a robbery gone wrong, but I knew better. Someone murdered him to silence him, and then—" I paused, my hand shaking. Then I started noticing things. A car following me, strange phone calls. Someone had broken into our apartment while I was at work. That's when I realized whoever killed Antonio thought I knew something. They were coming for me next. "So you disappeared," Chris said. I nodded. "I quit my job, sold everything I could quietly, and vanished. I couldn't use credit cards because they could be traced. Couldn't go to my friends because I'd put them in danger. I've been living in cheap motels, moving every few weeks, collecting leftover food so I don't leave a paper trail at grocery stores, all to keep my baby safe." Chris was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Vincent, it's Chris. I need you to come to the restaurant right now and bring a security detail. I have someone who needs protection." He hung up and looked at me. "Vincent is my head of security, former military, best in the business. He'll keep you safe." "No," I said too quickly. "You don't understand. These people are dangerous. If you help me, you'll become a target too. I can't let that happen." Chris reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time a man had touched me gently since Antonio died, and I almost started crying again. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and child," he said softly. "I couldn't protect them. I couldn't save them, and I've been living with that guilt every single day, but I can protect you. Please, let me help you." There was something in his voice, in his eyes, that made me believe him. And more than that, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel, a connection, a spark. It terrified me because I was still mourning Antonio, still wearing his ring. But I couldn't deny that something passed between us in that moment. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." That night, Chris arranged for me to stay in a secure hotel, one of the properties his company owned. He paid for everything, stationed security outside my door, and made sure I had everything I needed. For the first time in months, I felt safe enough to actually sleep. But what I didn't know, what Chris didn't know, was that we were already being watched. Chris's younger brother Stephen had been at the restaurant that night. Stephen was 35, charming, and had always lived in his older brother's shadow. He resented Chris for inheriting most of their father's business, for being the successful one, for having had a perfect marriage while Stephen's relationships always failed. Stephen had seen Chris with me through the restaurant window, and something about it bothered him. Chris never paid attention to women. He'd been closed off since Catherine died, so who was this mysterious pregnant woman who had somehow caught his attention? Stephen made a phone call that night. "We might have a problem," he said to someone on the other end. "Chris has found a woman. I don't know who she is yet, but she's important to him. That could complicate things." The person on the other end said something, and Stephen smiled coldly. "Don't worry. I'll handle it. I always do." The next morning, Chris showed up at my hotel room with breakfast. Fresh croissants, fruit, orange juice, coffee. He knocked gently, and when I opened the door, he smiled at me in a way that made my heart skip. "Good morning," he said. "I thought you might be hungry." We sat together in my room, eating breakfast, and for the first time in months, I felt almost normal, almost human again. "Why are you being so kind to me?" I asked him. "You don't even know me." Chris was quiet for a moment, looking down at his coffee. "Honestly, I don't know. Something about you. I haven't felt anything in 3 years. Not happiness, not sadness, not hope. Just emptiness. But when I saw you last night, when I caught you before you fell, I felt something, like I was waking up from a long sleep." I understood exactly what he meant, because I felt it too. This connection between us that didn't make logical sense, but felt as real as the air we were breathing. We talked for hours that morning about loss, about pain, about survival. Chris told me about Catherine, about how she'd been his college sweetheart, about the joy of finding out they were having a baby, and the devastation of losing them both in a single terrible night. "The doctors said there were complications," he said, his voice heavy with old grief. "Hemorrhaging during delivery. They tried everything, but she was gone in minutes. The baby never took a breath." I reached out and took his hand, and we sat there in comfortable silence, two broken people who understood each other's pain. That's when his mother arrived. Patricia Hawthorne was 68 years old, elegant and sharp, the kind of woman who commanded respect the moment she entered a room. Chris had told her about me, about helping a woman in trouble, and Patricia had insisted on meeting me. But the moment Patricia walked into my hotel room and saw my face, she stopped dead in her tracks. The color drained from her cheeks and she grabbed the doorframe for support. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." Chris jumped up. "Mother? What's wrong?" Patricia was staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. Who are you? What's your full name?" "Mariana," I said, confused and frightened. "Mariana Santos Martinez." "Your maiden name," Patricia demanded. "What was your maiden name before you married?" "Santos. I was adopted. I don't know my birth name." Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. "Chris? Do you see it? Look at her. Really look at her." Chris turned to me, studying my face like he was seeing me for the first time. And then I saw it, the moment of recognition in his eyes, the shock, the disbelief. "She looks like Catherine," he breathed. "Exactly like Catherine." Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Not just similar. Identical, Chris. This woman could be Catherine's twin sister." The room started spinning. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. "That's impossible. I don't have a sister. I was told I was abandoned as a baby, left at a hospital. The adoption agency said there were no siblings. But even as I said it, I knew deep in my bones, I knew. That feeling I'd carried my whole life, the feeling that part of me was missing, that I was incomplete. It suddenly made sense. Patricia sat down heavily in a chair. "Catherine was adopted," she said quietly. We got her when she was 6 months old. The agency told us she was from a poor family who couldn't care for her. We never knew anything about her birth parents or any siblings. Chris was pacing now, his mind racing. This can't be a coincidence. Mariana shows up here looking exactly like my dead wife. There has to be a connection. There is, I said slowly. All the pieces I'd been trying to fit together for months were finally clicking into place. Antonio, my husband, before he died, he was helping me search for my birth family. He'd found records, documents. He told me I had a twin sister who'd been separated from me at birth, a sister who was adopted by a wealthy family named Hawthorne. The silence in that room was deafening. I came to this city to find her, I continued, tears running down my face. I was going to meet her, introduce myself, finally have the sister I'd dreamed about my whole life. And then Antonio told me he'd discovered something else in his research, something terrible. I looked directly at Chris. He found out that my sister, your wife, Catherine, that she didn't die from natural complications. She was murdered. Chris staggered backward like I'd physically struck him. What? No! The doctors said... The doctors were wrong, or they were paid to lie, I said. Antonio found medical records, testimony from a nurse who was threatened into silence. Catherine was poisoned. Someone gave her something during her hospital stay that caused the hemorrhaging. It was made to look like natural complications, but it was murder. Premeditated murder. Patricia was sobbing now. Who? Who would do such a thing? I don't know, I admitted. Antonio was trying to find proof, trying to identify the killer. That's what got him murdered too. Whoever killed Catherine realized Antonio was getting close to the truth, so they eliminated him. And now they're after me because they think Antonio told me everything he'd discovered. Chris was looking at me with a mixture of horror and growing rage. You're saying someone murdered my wife and unborn child, and then killed your husband to cover it up? And now they're hunting you? I nodded. I think the killer is someone close to you, Chris. Someone who had access to Catherine in the hospital, someone who had reason to want her dead. That's insane, Chris shouted. Everyone loved Catherine. She didn't have enemies. What about you, Chris? Patricia asked quietly. Who would benefit from Catherine's death? Who would gain from her being gone? Before Chris could answer, the hotel room door burst open. Stephen walked in without knocking, his face a mask of false concern. Brother, Mother, I heard you were here and... He stopped when he saw me. For just a split second, his expression changed. I saw recognition in his eyes, and fear, and calculation. Then the mask slipped back into place. Who's this? Stephen, this is Mariana, Chris said, still reeling from everything he'd just learned. It's complicated. Stephen walked closer to me, studying my face. You look exactly like Catherine, he said. It's uncanny. She's Catherine's twin sister, Patricia said. Separated at birth. I watched Stephen's face carefully, as this information registered most people would show shock, or curiosity, or sympathy. But what I saw in Stephen's eyes for just a moment was something else entirely. It was calculation, like he was reassessing a situation that had suddenly become more complicated. Incredible, Stephen said smoothly. What are the odds? And you just happened to end up here in our city? I was looking for my sister, I said, not breaking eye contact, before I found out she was dead. Tragic, Stephen said, but his tone was cold. Well, I'm sure Chris is taking good care of you. He's very good at playing the hero. There was an edge to his words, a bitterness. Chris caught it too. Stephen, is there something you needed? Just checking on my family, Stephen said with a fake smile. Wanted to make sure everything was all right, but I can see you're busy. I'll leave you to your reunion. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Mariana? Welcome to the family. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of each other. The way he said it sent chills down my spine. After Stephen left, Chris called Vincent, his security chief. I want you to run a background check on Stephen. Everything. His finances, his associates, everywhere he's been for the past 3 years. I want to know what my brother's been doing. Vincent was silent on the other end. Then, Sir, are you sure? He's your brother? Just do it, Chris said grimly. And Vincent? I need the results today. The next few days were intense. Chris moved me to his private estate where security was tighter. Patricia stayed with us, helping me prepare for the baby that would arrive in less than a month. And Chris and I were spending every moment together. We couldn't help it. The connection between us was growing stronger, impossible to ignore. One evening, we were sitting in his study, going through Antonio's research that I'd kept hidden all these months: files, documents, medical records, photographs. Chris was seeing for the first time the evidence that his wife had been murdered. "This nurse," he said, pointing to a testimony, "Stephanie Crawford, she says someone bribed the attending physician, Dr. Harrison, to add medication to Catherine's IV. Medication that would cause bleeding." Antonio tried to interview Dr. Harrison, I said. The doctor refused to talk. Then, 2 weeks later, Dr. Harrison left the country, moved to Switzerland, retired early. Chris's jaw clenched. Someone paid him off. Paid him well enough to disappear forever. I nodded. And look at this. I showed him a bank transfer record. 3 days before Catherine died, someone transferred $500,000 to Dr. Harrison's offshore account. Antonio traced it back through 3 shell companies, but he hit a wall. He couldn't identify who made the transfer. "But he had suspects," Chris said, looking at me. "Yes," I admitted. He had one main suspect, someone who had motive, means, and opportunity. I took a deep breath. "Chris, Antonio believed it was someone in your family, someone who would benefit from Catherine's death." Before Chris could respond, Vincent burst into the study without knocking. His face was grim. "Sir, we have a major problem. You need to see this right now." Vincent handed Chris a tablet. On it were bank records, emails, photographs. Chris's face went from confused to shocked to absolutely furious as he scrolled through the information. "Stephen," he whispered. "It was Stephen." Vincent nodded. "Your brother has been embezzling from Hawthorne Enterprises for 5 years, over $50 million, hidden through a complex network of fake contractors and shell companies. But 3 years ago, Mrs. Catherine discovered irregularities in the accounts. She confronted Stephen about it. Chris was shaking with rage, and he killed her to keep her quiet. That's not all, sir," Vincent continued. "I tracked Stephen's movements over the past year. He hired a private investigator to track down Antonio Martinez after Antonio started asking questions about Catherine's death, and 6 months ago—" Vincent paused. "6 months ago, Stephen was in contact with the man who killed Antonio. I have phone records." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "He murdered my husband. He murdered Catherine. He's been trying to kill me." "Where is he?" Chris demanded. "Where's Stephen right now?" Vincent checked his phone. "According to his last known location, he's here, on the property. He entered through the east gate 10 minutes ago." Patricia, who had been listening from the doorway, gasped. "He's here? Chris, he could be dangerous." But Chris was already moving, rage and determination in every step. "Get Mariana and my mother to the safe room now and call the police." "Chris, wait!" I called out, but he was already gone. Vincent tried to escort Patricia and me to safety, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't hide while Chris confronted a murderer alone. So when Vincent wasn't looking, I slipped away and followed Chris. I found them in the main living room. Stephen was standing by the fireplace, and he was holding a gun. "I knew you'd figure it out eventually," Stephen was saying. "You were always the smart one, Chris. The golden boy, father's favorite, mother's pride and joy. Everything always came so easy to you." "You killed Catherine," Chris said, his voice deadly calm. "You killed my wife and my child because she discovered you were stealing from the family." "She was going to ruin me," Stephen shouted. "She was going to expose everything, send me to prison. I worked for that company too. I deserved that money." "So you poisoned her," Chris continued. "Paid off a doctor to murder her in the hospital where she should have been safe." "It was supposed to look natural," Stephen said, "and it did. Everyone believed it. You believed it. But then that damn journalist started digging around, asking questions, and I had to deal with him too." "Antonio Martinez," I said, stepping into the room. Both men turned to look at me. You had my husband killed." Stephen's eyes widened when he saw me. "Mariana, you should have stayed hidden. You should have just disappeared and never come back." "You've been trying to kill me for months," I said, walking slowly toward him even though he had a gun, following me, threatening me, trying to silence me like you silenced Antonio. "You're a loose end," Stephen said coldly. "Antonio told you everything before he died, didn't he? All his research, all his evidence. You're the only one who knows the truth." "Actually," Chris said, "we all know now. Vincent found everything. The embezzlement, the payments to Dr. Harrison, your connection to Antonio's killer. It's over, Stephen. The police are already on their way." Stephen's hand tightened on the gun. "Then I have nothing to lose." He pointed the gun at me, and everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Chris lunged forward, trying to get between us. I stumbled backward, my hand instinctively going to my belly to protect my baby. And then, a sharp, intense pain ripped through my abdomen, not from a bullet, from my body. The stress, the terror, it triggered something. My water broke and I collapsed to my knees. "The baby!" I gasped. "The baby's coming!" In that moment of chaos and confusion, Vincent and 3 security guards burst into the room. They tackled Stephen, wrestling the gun away from him. Stephen fought like a madman, screaming about how unfair everything was, how he deserved better, how he should have been the successful one, but I barely noticed because the contractions were coming fast and hard. Chris was on the floor next to me, holding me, his face pale with worry. "Ambulance is 2 minutes away," Vincent said, kneeling beside us. "I don't think we have 2 minutes," I gasped between contractions. "This baby is coming now." Patricia appeared, taking charge like the strong woman she was. "Chris, get blankets. Vincent, hot water and clean towels. We're doing this here." And we did, right there on the living room floor, with Stephen being arrested in the background, with sirens approaching in the distance, with the man I'd grown to love holding my hand and telling me I could do this. I gave birth to my daughter. She came out crying, healthy and perfect. Patricia wrapped her in a blanket and placed her in my arms, and I looked down at this tiny miracle and burst into tears. "She's beautiful," Chris whispered, and when I looked at his face, I saw that he was crying too. The paramedics arrived and checked both me and the baby. We were both healthy, stable. The police arrested Stephen, who was still shouting and struggling, insisting that he'd been justified, that he deserved the money, that it wasn't his fault. At the police station later, Stephen confessed to everything. The embezzlement, bribing Dr. Harrison to poison Catherine, hiring the hitman who killed Antonio. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and a dozen other crimes. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. Dr. Harrison was extradited from Switzerland and also faced charges. The nurse, Stephanie Crawford, who had been too afraid to speak up before, finally gave her full testimony. Catherine's death was officially ruled a homicide. Antonio's death was solved. And I was finally safe. 6 months later, I was standing in Patricia's beautiful garden, holding my daughter Laura. Yes, I'd named her Laura, after both our mothers, because Patricia had told me that was Catherine's mother's name too. The past 6 months had been like living in a dream. Chris had asked me to stay at the estate while I recovered and adjusted to being a new mother. Patricia had been incredible, treating me like the daughter she'd lost, helping with the baby, telling me stories about Catherine and Chris. Chris and I had grown closer every single day. At first, we were both hesitant. I was still mourning Antonio, still wearing his ring. Chris was still processing the truth about Catherine's death and his complicated feelings about having his wife's twin sister in his life. But slowly, carefully, we fell in love. It wasn't like I was replacing Catherine, and I wasn't trying to. Chris made that clear to me one night when we were sitting together watching baby Laura sleep. "I loved Catherine with all my heart," he said. "Losing her destroyed me. But you're not her replacement, Mariana. You're your own person. Strong, brave, beautiful in ways that are completely unique to you. And I've fallen in love with you, not with Catherine's memory, with you." Those words healed something broken inside me because I needed to hear that I wasn't just a substitute, a second choice. I was my own person, and I was loved for who I was. Now, in the garden, Chris found me standing under the oak tree. He took my hand and smiled at me with that smile that always made my heart skip. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Of course," I said, handing Laura to Patricia, who was more than happy to hold her granddaughter, because that's what Patricia had become, a grandmother to my daughter and a mother to me. Chris led me to a quiet corner of the garden where white roses bloomed all around us. He took both my hands in his and looked into my eyes. "Mariana, 8 months ago you came into my life as a stranger begging for food outside my restaurant. You were hiding, terrified, alone. I thought I was saving you that night, but the truth is, you saved me. You brought me back to life. You gave me hope again. You showed me that it's possible to heal, to love again, to build a future." My heart was pounding because I knew what was coming. Chris pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a ring, not huge and flashy, but perfect, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the sunlight. "I'm not asking you to replace Catherine," he continued. "I'm asking you to be my future, to build a life with me, to let me be a father to Laura, and to love you for the rest of my days. Mariana, will you marry me?" I was crying, but these were tears of joy, pure, overwhelming joy. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, Chris. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring on my finger, not the same finger where Antonio's ring still rested. I'd moved Antonio's ring to my right hand because I would always honor his memory, always be grateful for the love we shared. But my left hand was ready for a new beginning, a new love, a new future. Chris kissed me then, gentle and sweet and full of promise, and I kissed him back, pouring all my hope and love into that moment. Patricia was crying happy tears when we walked back to her, hand in hand. She hugged us both and whispered, "Catherine would be so happy. She'd want you both to be happy, to love each other, to live fully." We got married 2 months later. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family. Patricia walked me down the aisle, and baby Laura was technically the ring bearer, though Patricia actually carried her and the rings. When Chris and I said our vows, I meant every word. "I came to this city looking for my sister," I said. "I found so much more. I found family, I found home, and I found love. You saved me when I was at my lowest. You protected me when I was in danger. You loved me when I thought I'd never feel love again. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice." Chris's vows made everyone cry. "You were disguised as a beggar, but you were an angel sent to remind me that life is worth living." I thought my story ended when Catherine died, but it didn't. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter I want to write with you every single day for the rest of our lives. After the ceremony, we released white doves, a tradition, but also a symbol of Catherine watching over us, blessing our union, happy that the people she loved had found each other. That night, as we celebrated with our small group of loved ones, I thought about the journey that brought me here from that terrifying night when Antonio died, through months of hiding and fear, to that moment outside Chris's restaurant when I was at my absolute lowest point. It all led me here, to this family, to this love, to this beautiful life. I looked at Chris holding baby Laura, dancing slowly with her in his arms, and my heart was so full I thought it might burst. I looked at Patricia, who had lost a daughter but gained another. I looked at all the people around us who had come to celebrate not just a wedding, but the healing of broken hearts and the building of a new family. And I realized something. Sometimes the family we lose leads us to the family we need. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually guiding us towards something beautiful. We never could have imagined I was a pregnant beggar asking for leftovers, hiding a secret that connected me to a family I didn't know I had. I lost a sister I never got to meet, but I found a love I never expected. And now, standing here surrounded by people who love me, holding a life I built from the ashes of tragedy, I finally understood. This was always how my story was supposed to end. Not with fear and loss, but with hope and love and new beginnings. So that's my story. I was a pregnant beggar asking for leftovers, hiding a secret that connected me to the family I'd been searching for my entire life. I lost a sister I never knew, but I found love I never expected. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Subscribe for more incredible stories of love, loss, and destiny. Tell me in the comments, do you believe some people are meant to find each other? Do you believe that even in our darkest moments, we're being guided towards something beautiful? Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the person asking for help is actually the answer to your prayers. Sometimes the stranger at your door is family you just haven't recognized yet. Never judge someone by their circumstances, because you never know what journey brought them to your doorstep. God bless you all, and never lose hope. No matter how dark things seem, there's always light waiting on the other side.